Right, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael Naylor, and I'm calling from cloudy South Portland, Maine today, where spring looks like it might occur sometime before July. We're keeping our fingers crossed, and I'm the director of the Maine Enneagram Center for Transformation and Change. And I'm here today to have an interview with beloved Maggie in Houston, Texas, and to explore the fascinating world of the type 4, which happens to be one of my favorite types to explore. So that said, thanks for being here, Maggie. Just a pleasure to have you. And, just say a little bit about yourself and how this all journey started for you.
Thank you, Michael. So fun to be with you. So fun to be with you. And to get to visit about type 4 and life from this cushion of meditation. It's cloudy here too, by the way. So how did I discover the Enneagram in the first place? My younger brother back in, I think it was either 1998 or 99, I think 99, my brother who was working in theater in Boston came across the Enneagram, sent it home and said, he calls me Margaret. Margaret, I think you're going to really find that interesting. And so I opened it up and went nuts. I don't know why my family did this, but I got all on fire. I gave the whole ready to my aunts and uncles, my grandparents, my brothers, my cousins. They all took it and they all gave me their results, which was an incredible generosity. I look back and I go, were they being super supportive? Or were they as interested as I was? I don't think they all were. But anyway, it gave me this opportunity to kind of grow up with the Enneagram with exemplars I knew well from the different domains. I like to think of the points on the Enneagram as of now as domains of humanness. All 9 domains of our humanness.
Yeah,
I just happen to prefer a couple. I'm really good at a couple. So I use those a lot, but they all took it. So I got to grow up early on self-teaching, reading the books. I read the Palmer books. I read the Riso Hudson books, and I loved the levels of development, which made so much sense to me and, popped it into a more dimensions. So I ended up really leaning into those, and I built charts, and I tried to correlate all the information and make visual architecture so I could understand it. And then finally, in about 2012, I went to my first Enneagram workshop at the Enneagram Institute, or through the Enneagram Institute. And then I started my training in, I think, 2014, and then took off from there. I got my certification in 2020, just in time, in March of 2020.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So say a little bit about, what it's been like. What's it like to be in the interior of a type 4? What is that interesting inner world?
Oh gosh, there's so many things to say. I'm really lucky to be married to a beautiful 9, someone who does the 9 and listens to me talk about that. Makes room for me. And I, it's one of the things that I find, and this is there's so many places to start. I'll just grab one.
Yeah.
And one is that I find a point of not tension, but there's a certain point where I will find myself seeing something through a lens that loads it with all that beauty and depth and takes in something so vast. And it's ordinary, but it's vast. And the piece is that I'll want someone to join me there. I'll want to be able to give a shorthand 2-word, did you check it? And have them completely get it. And join me in this place of, I don't know, the something beautiful and deep. And I, those words, I hear those a lot now, but it's true. And I will that's one of my points where I can get really frustrated when I was trying to figure out, where does my idealism as a four, where does that start to play out? Where does that trip me up? And I had a hard time finding the idealism piece for a while, and I finally caught it. There it is. I want to tell my singer-songwriter friends how much I love their music. And my husband says, yes, that's a great idea. And I can tell that he didn't hear me say, I want them to know that when they sing their songs, the vibrations of their voice wake up every cell in my being, and they take me places in my own life, to my own biography, to the way I love my parents, to the way I feel the wind in the air, to all of these places, and they're in me in this beautiful way. And I want to let them know how much that means to me.
Oh.
And yeah, there's a little point there where I can, if I'm not, if I'm kind of not in a great place, that can become a moment where I can feel abandoned, misunderstood, missed. And it's this, that's one of the places where that idealism plays out in the four terrain for this four.
Yeah, so that wish to at least have some sort of point of contact, of understanding this beautiful sort of experience you had from the sound of their voice, and how it, activated all of your circuits of creativity and universal imagining, and then it's like having no place to go with it. It's like, oh, let me share this with you. Oh yeah, that's interesting. What else is going on today? Right? It's like stab wound. I just brought this back from the core of the universe, and you're going to like brush it off. I think I'm, either I'm going to abandon you, or you've just abandoned me, right? So yeah.
It's funny to me, I find it tender and interesting that this beautiful, beautiful place is a place where I can turn quickly. My inner critic can make me flip and turn so fast because it's precious, and that I would turn my back on that preciousness in the face of, my perception of the lack of connection, sort of that maybe I could be a teacher and teach the people I care most about what it is I'm saying when I say these goofy things.
Got to get an audience for this stuff, right? So we can go back and forth for sure. It's like that's Holy Communion in many ways. So,
and the flip of it that I also feel like, okay, I really want to lean into this one is, I remember Tyler Sitt at the last Global Summit saying something about, I need to check my privilege. And he was speaking about a certain environment in a certain way from sevenness. And I was thinking, oh, well, there you go. I can check my privilege in a moment where I have such access to all of this sweeping terrain and all of this, and maybe check my privilege there and ask my beloved what the beautiful, vast, deep thing that he sees. And, if I make a disconnection, if I feel like, oh, you didn't get it, how can you not get that? Can't you see that? I don't know how you can't see that. And ask, and ask my beloved, so what would that mean to you? And see if I can create a conversation that way.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great strategy, so that you don't fall into the well of abandonment and misunderstood, right? Well, look, when you were, let's say, a little kid or teenager, were you aware, as you look back, on how your fourness operated? Were you longing for something you couldn't put your fingers on? Were you withdrawn? Were you super sensitive? I mean, what you recall?
All of that. I do remember. I do remember when I was little tiny. I think I was four or five. We lived in Pleasant Hill, which is a place in Oregon, and my parents were, I guess, leasing a holly farm for some reason. My dad was in grad school, and there was cows in the pastures around our house. And we didn't have neighbors, there weren't close neighbors. And so there was a lot of time spent alone or with each other. My older brother and my younger brother was still a baby. And I would walk along the little roads past the cow pastures, and I would see the cows in the fields. And I knew then there was that in the mountains in the distance, far, far away. But I would sing to the cows, and I felt really sure that my singing made them feel better, made them feel it was a beautiful thing. And we had this exchange. And it wasn't on my radar then that was anything at all. It seemed like, well, yeah, I mean, look, they need singing. So singing.
Yeah, lovely.
And it's obvious that it helps. So,
Beautiful.
that I remember being an experience that stayed with me. Doing that, I remember I was very shy kid. My early kindergarten, first grade, even preschool memories have a lot of shame in them. A sense of, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know how to do what they're doing. They all look like they go together, and I don't know where to plug in. So very early.
Well, when did so you started your singing life with the cows, and it sounds like that might have evolved. So how did creativity unfold for you?
I was lucky to grow up in a family that had a lot of permission. My mom is a beautiful theater maker, creator, community theater person, who really does believe in this beautiful building of community through theater. So that was a huge part of our lives. We had lots of permission. In the theater world, we expand our voice and we expand what our bodies can do. So there was a lot of permission in our house to be super zany, very loud, make strange noises. And so there was lots of just creativity and permission in the air. But I was drawn to the singing. My parents also sang. My dad played the guitar in the Navy. Used to go port to port and woo the women. But so he says.
Yeah.
In his nine-ness. But I followed theater, and I got very interested in dream theater. It's my favorite theater on the planet, is taking my type 4 mentor, beloved teacher, John Lipsky, taught this kind of acting through imagery and putting dreams on their feet. And so we did that for a while. It's phenomenal theater. It is so fun because you go to these places that are dream images, but you resonate with them because they come from that deep, universal, unconscious space. They're hilarious. They're moving. They're magical. And they're not constrained by these sort of literal definers and definitions of how we are socially or any other way. So we did that. I loved that. I became a singer-songwriter. I did that for years. And my beloved 7 with a lot of 8 mom, who's this phenomenal theater maker, community builder, would always want me to play big venues. Big venues. A lot of noise out there in the papers. Get on the radio. And I had the hardest time with that because my whole desire for doing any of it was I wanted to go into the space and put out these songs that were healing for me, or that touched something for me that seemed like it mattered. And if anybody wanted to come with me, my sense of performing was not so much this, but I have something. I think you might like it. Come with me.
That's great.
Isn't an arena filler. Coffee houses and
Oh, yeah. Well, beautiful. So if you're when I look back on my life as a recovering 4, I'll notice that there were certain emotional challenges that I had to heal and digest. I seem to have a lot of grief and sadness that I needed to log many hours crying from the depth of my soul, uh, and eventually my heart settled. Thank God for that. But it seemed to revolve around a real, I think, as a little guy, a real hunger to be closer to my mother and father, even though they were really lovely people. How do you feel the needs of a type 4? Good luck. But yeah, just sort of misunderstandings that occurred, and that sense of being an outsider sometimes, or the big one that my inner critic still likes to bother me about, which is, when you die, Michael, they'll remember nothing about you. Now, if that doesn't cheer you up, I don't know what will. Have a nice day, right? So, I had pieces of that. So I went like, when you think about the interesting inner structures you've had to navigate, and you were going to be a navigational guide for some poor type 4 who's 15 and going, oh my God, like what comes up for you? What do you recall about all of that?
Again, there's so many things. That internal sense of alienation. I always knew my parents loved me to death, just loved me. And I never saw something that looked like me mirrored in them. I just, it wasn't, and I didn't even feel like I was adopted or an alien so much as I just kind of would look at it and go, that's that thing. And that's that thing. I don't see that over here. That's, and it, so the alienation felt, as we do as kids, something's wrong with me. Something's broken about me. Something is not going to work. Something's not wanted. Bless the Enneagram and therapies and different modalities of healing that in this day and age, as a mom, I get to have access to things I can know about my own kiddo who's a different type than me. When I found the Enneagram, we say we can't change the past. And I say, well, we can, in that it sort of rewrote the past. I could then understand where my mom was coming from in these massive battles we could have. I could understand what was so scary about me for her, because I could be so dark. I could be so, I had suicidal ideation for years. I didn't know how to communicate those deep things. I have two beautiful positive outlook parents who made room, all this phenomenal room for everything. And yet there's somehow, not by conscious choice, there wasn't room for this darker place. So they were afraid of it. I should be afraid of it. Should I be afraid of it? This is more twisted. As a kiddo, sometimes I look back and I think if someone might have been able to whisper into my space, I see that you see something I can't see, and I'm really interested. Can you tell me something about it so maybe I can get some of it? That might have felt validating, or at least, what I think is wrong with me, weird about me, unexplainable about me. Someone's interested in that part, not just how do we fix you or how do we get you plugged into something that works better, or that piece feels particularly healing from in there. Yeah, I struggled a lot. I was bulimic for many years. I was an alcoholic. I'm 20 years sober. I'm very grateful for that. Grateful. There were periods of not self-cutting, but self-hitting, which I used to feel the inner world was in such a roil that to bring attention to the outside, to the surface of the skin, was a kind of state change. It served as a state change, not a very good one, but it worked for a time. And all of that was trying to not heal, because I still didn't know how to do that, but I was trying to do something about that, the gap between where I felt like I was inside and where
Mhm.
it looked to me like everybody else was outside.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. You know, I know as a little guy, I had this sense of sort of the emotional darkness that was actually in my family, uh, and that no one talked about. And then the external world I was expected to navigate with no directions or a very good map. And, you know, as a little type four, it's like, you know, I really looked hard and deep at like what's my exit strategy? What can take some of the heaviness off of this whole thing? Because I really felt just sort of a mysterious longing and sadness as a little guy, and what I found was sports. Like that was like the pressure relief valve. I was really had inherited my mother and father's natural physical grace and sort of sensitivity to how to catch a ball, how to track it, how to hit it, how to shoot it. And so I propelled a lot of my energy there as a great relief for this kind of deeper emotional question that I didn't even know how to put into words, but that came through me sometimes as sadness or feeling other people's sadness too deeply and not even understanding what it was, just that I felt it and you know, was easily cried. You know, we'd play a baseball game and we'd lose and I'd weep. I'm just grieving the lost game. That's all. And that's what I do. So anyway, that kind of, you know, it was like the course of my life is around learning how to navigate and bring language to that and then to begin to transform it and make sense of it. And, you know, it's been a work in progress. It's been long and slow. So I can feel what you're saying, and certainly it's interesting about, you know, alcoholism. I'm also in recovery myself, and what I liked about alcoholism was that it changed my state, and sometimes it put it into a pseudo form of creativity, or you know, it enhanced the very bad relationships I had and gave them a little juice. And you know, brought a little different kind of darkness into the world. But also sometimes I would sense something beyond my sort of personality structure. There was a mystery there that occasionally I got to touch when I was getting high, and then it would disappear, and I'd be back on the ground groveling again. But so I'm not sure why I say all of this, just to say, you know, does that spark anything in you or anything that you want to jump on, or, you know?
First of all, thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that. And I just want to hug this little person who's weeping at the lost game. Just I love you. Um, it's just so tender.
Mhm.
And I guess when I hear that, what kind of rings in me is that sense of mm, perpetually seeing things in so many different dimensions that there's the surface. Okay, I'll give you this one here's my sports one. Watching the basketball game, and the crowd at the University of Wyoming arena begins to do the wave. And I start crying. I look at my husband, I'm like, they're all in it together. And I absolutely thought it was hilarious and silly, and I absolutely meant it. At the same time, I went, there's this humanity in this room, and they've all just agreed that they're going to do this celebratory thing with their whole body, and it's going to go around and around, and they're going to respond. And yeah, sure, maybe some of the people were just getting up and down because that's what we're all doing, but I couldn't not see something so beautiful under it. And
Hmm.
that can sometimes, so in that moment, it was funny, but it was so beautiful. And that's what woke up for me with this boy crying over the loss of the game, because there's the game and there's this whole endeavor of these people and this, I don't know, it gets into this. But I love that. I love that about the four space. Um,
Yeah.
uh, and then something you said about something else. Now I've lost it. It's in the wave.
It'll recirculate, you know how it is. Yeah, well, I was thinking, you know, I, the teams, I got to play at a lot of teams that became like a unified, one-minded entity where we won games over and over and over again in championships. And there was always an inner knowing of how deeply connected we were and how there was this magic that would occur at the right moment that we all unconsciously rested in. And it was really the most, I always felt a deep love for my teammates. There was this love and energy of love and unity that just made every game like a prayer. We're going to church today. Let's see what's the magic, whether it's basketball or baseball. And of course, this is looking back, and I didn't quite have that language back then, but that really was the felt sense to that deeper connection with kids that I really loved and had affection for, and that foreness of just sort of seeing this chapel of unity where we're uniting and magic happens. I mean, I just can tell you so many moments where just out of thin air, a miracle would occur and somebody would know exactly where the other person was going to be and throw the ball, make the basket, and another championship. And I just sit back and go, well, of course, this is what we do, right? So, that's the forward journey, right? Just that sense of feeling the loving connection with all the players and the kind of mysterious unity. So I wonder for you, how did that come through when you were performing and singing, that sense of that unified connection with people?
Yes. And now I'm going to grab two things. So I'll do this first because I remembered a little bit about the other thing I was going to say, but absolutely. And there's the craft piece. As a singer-songwriter and a storyteller and a performer, there's the craft of how you stand in the space and, how you do your set list, who you thank, how you, the rhythms of the songs, the way you play, the vocalizing, all of that stuff is a piece. But all of it, none of it matters if there isn't that, let's meet each other. Let's find that place where we meet that isn't about the concert, and yet the concert is the vehicle. Let's, the most magical concerts for me were always the ones where you could feel that beautiful ride in the room that had to do with our humanness and our foibles and our, I would, make mistakes. Or at one concert, I connected with somebody and it was really lovely. And I kept playing and I couldn't remember my song. So someone brought one of my CDs up to the stage and showed me lyrics because I could not find them. On we went. So it's the kind of magic, it's that magic piece. And I know that, my younger brother is a 6 and he's an actor, and he has, I think he would describe the same things in a different way, a different way that we arrive in that space. And I wish I could, I keep wanting to have longer conversations with him about that, but that sacredness, that sense of the magic, that I would love to get a round table of, all the different artists and performers in a field, I guess, and just hear, how do you experience that? And the other piece I was going to say had to do with the open boundary bit, that part of the journey from the 4 domain does have, from my experience in the way I do the 4 domain, that constantly being aware of what's not being said and having a hard time sometimes, especially with people I'm very close to, when someone comes into the space and they're really not saying something. It's a real challenge that I want to do well, to be able to read whether or not, is this a moment that I say here's a feeling I'm getting, or here's are you okay? Or did you want to share with me? And sometimes it's just, they're not ready. It's not on their radar yet. They don't know that they're, sometimes later in the day, my husband and I'll get into a conversation. He'll say, I was feeling this all day. I just really didn't notice it until just now.
Mhm.
And the whole day I'm picking up on it. And I guess it's more nurturing myself around where I go when I feel like someone's not saying something. There were a lot of things not said in our house growing up. And, it's crazy making. I think I do IFS work, and there's a part in IFS work, you sort of look at the inner critic as different parts. That's how I see it. There's different parts, or different face. Here's a different face that the inner critic puts out there. I have one I call the madness of not mattering, which, and I named her Ophelia from Hamlet, just the madness of not mattering. It's sort of a crazy making, feeling like I'm crazy because I'm pretty sure something really real is happening here, and absolutely no one is looking at it, responding to it. It seems to, and as a little kid, that would feel crazy. Yeah. And so I can tell that part of me wakes up sometimes with people I'm very close to, when it seems like something that affects the moment we're having is really not being said.
Yeah, well, that's, it's interesting. As a recovering four, one of the compulsions I had for years was if emotional honesty wasn't in the room, I was like a dragon. I would just, right?
Yeah.
So, because I had this sense of, I'm an honest, emotionally honest person, and that's what I do, right? That's not really understanding that was a script, and I made many, many mistakes around revealing people's underbelly before they were interested or ready, right? So I was like a butcher, and I just thought I'm doing it for your own good, right? They had a different opinion about that. But it took me a long time to learn when it was responsible for me to say something and when it was an ego agenda thing or some kind of script that my inner critic was pumping at me, like, you need to blow this thing open. And I learned that most of the time being quiet was really a compassionate thing to do, right? Because I was also assuming that whatever my read on what was going on, that it was the truth. And so, of course, I'm going to tell you the truth. And so there's a little bit of self-righteousness behind it. And that kind of cheered me up a little while until it didn't. But yeah, learning to notice that I, as a little one or as a teenager up into the ages, was this sense of being able to feel what was unsaid. The unsaid, I think talk about the unsaid suffering that's stuffed underneath the rug, that the little four kid sort of has it goes, oh, it's right there. You're not talking about this. That makes me nervous. What else is not being said? Is it safe here? No, it's not. So anyway, that's how I've navigated that.
Yeah. And just what you said there, that makes me nervous.
Yeah.
There is an anxiety that comes with it. It's sort of uh-oh. And when the anxiety rises, sometimes that'll tell me before I've even tracked it, I'll suddenly start feeling anxious. I'll sort of check out what I'm racing through at the moment and go, oh, yeah. It's not always that. Anxiety comes from other places as well, but sometimes it points out, oh, there are certain ways in long-term relationships that you can habituate to not talking about certain things. In those habituated moments, it's the anxiety that will make me go, oh, you're doing that habit around this thing that's not being said, and we're not having it. And your dragon would be this Ophelia creature. It's like the madness of not mattering is destroyed. Launch out there and rip it open until the truth comes out. So we have to have a lot of conversations.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Yeah. Well, so these are powerful sort of inner scripts that I inherited as a little guy, but didn't have any words for. I was like, what is this stuff? It just sort of happens, and so mistakes were made along the way, and then I think the Enneagram and learning about it has been really powerful for quieting the waters. And so I was thinking of one particular phenomena, the phenomena of envy, that some force, not all force, but a lot of force notice that they have a kind of heart wound around, I didn't get the instructions and you did, and and it's painful, and may you have a really suffering death that will cheer me up and calm my envy down a little bit. So what's been your navigation of envy?
Yeah. Again, just so grateful for the Enneagram for so many different things. It's the language that it gives me to identify things so that I'm not just blindly groping in the space and not knowing what to identify and work with. For a path to make shifts, for a practice that comes with it that also helps me become a better self-observer, also to tap into self-compassion. All of those and more things matter so much to dealing with those features of coming from that force space, because the envy piece is really painful. It isn't a jealousy. It isn't even so much, gee, I wish you harm because look what you have and I don't. It's a real sense, again, of what is so unbelievably wrong with me. How you all look really happy. You look like it's easy for you to take these actions or be in these social settings. And I would love to join you. And I don't have the equipment. It's like looking at the world full of limbed people with no limbs and thinking, I'd love to throw a ball with you. That's a random off the top of my head analogy, but there's something about it that's really painful, and it isn't wishing others ill. It's something that would drive me into hiding, retreating, isolating, becoming more and more afraid of people that to me seemed to function better and have an easier sense of self. When I learned the inner critic psychic structures part of the Enneagram, it helped me tremendously because I didn't know about the open boundary piece, and that I could develop some really beautiful management skills for this permeability, that so many things come in, but also so many things come up from within me. And when I get a hit from the outside world that I don't have that ease and I envy you and I want that will spin around in here and grow bigger, distort, grab a bunch of friends, pile them on the wagon, and it can become crazy. But when I understand that I'm letting a lot of excess stuff in here that's not mine, and I'm letting a lot of non-truths rise up, that helps me, know what I'm working on when I do my practices. And that's just one of the, I don't know how many things that are there to work on, but being able to identify that, having compassion for that is painful, being able to touch into something bigger than me that helps me remember I have capacities. I'm not broken. There is something really beautiful here. It may have a different language. That's wonderful. I can step into the world from where I am. And when I love the part of the three-centeredness, that really is a huge part of my life, is to do a three-centered practice, to find my feet. I wonder who told me that. to really work on finding my feet, connect that to all three centers. And the leaning back, for me, that's a real help, because I have a tendency to come forward in my wish, my sort of energetic wish that something was different or that I had something to offer, and being able to rest back into the spine. This is something that Russ Hudson and Robert Holden and Jessica Dibb all sort of said, yeah, that's a good practice. But it keeps then just to come home. And I love this AA saying, which is come all the way in, sit all the way down. Because if you're in here trying to recover and you're all squirrely and up here and trying to figure it out and be too smart and it's not going to land. So when I do the three-centered practice, I'm inviting myself to come all the way in to all three centers, sit all the way down. That helps. I still get, envy is in there, but I have these tools to help.
Yeah.
I kind of wondered.
No, not really. It was all interrelated. So I know in my journey, working on the three centers has meant, through meditation practice and lots of awesome therapy, noticing judgments or belief structures that were illusions. And in meditation and good counseling, coaching, helped me to see that and not buy into whatever the programming is. And of course, that's a 3 or 4 lifetime job of just sort of quieting and just sort of being able to be here. And then the heart, a lot to do with healing the grieving and sadness, suppressed hurt, anger, rage, etc., and doing a lot of emotional work to bring this heart into a place of quiescent safety and groundedness, and so that has taken many, many years. And then landing in my body, sensing my body, feeling the fullness of my sensation, and also doing things that create flexibility in my body, stretching, dance, etc., or strength. What I love about the Gurdjieff work is Gurdjieff was clear. You got to work your ass off physically. You got to wake this thing up. You can't be in your head meditating and thinking that's the only doorway. You gotta sweat. And if you haven't learned how to sweat, that's a problem. That center is not activated. So anyway, that's how those moments of unity, seem to have occurred from a lot of different things over the course of many years, suddenly somehow illuminating something that is stable and grounded. And I don't really know how it happened. I'm just glad it happened.
Really beautifully said, Michael. That rings my experience as well, that for years I've done lots and lots of therapy, and I did AA, and it took me a long time to figure out that the human beings in that program actually knew some things I didn't. So it took me a long time to get in there and sit down, come all the way and sit all the way down. And learning to do those practices over time, over years, and getting to be on that beautiful ride of getting it. I got it. I get it. I get it. And on, it just keeps deepening, and each new piece. And the same with the Enneagram work, the same with the three-centered work, and all of the tools I've been given in my life. There's that over the years, it just becomes this beautiful organism of connectedness, and to get to know that where I've gotten to, and I get it, that there's a bajillion of those out in front of me that I'm eager to receive when I get there.
Yeah.
And that staying consistent is how I do that.
Mhm. Meaning, say more about that, staying consistent. What does that mean for you?
So for me, from the 4 space, consistency has never been a strong suit. It really, truly, the description of doing things based on being inspired and the whole journey to one at, there's a saying in AA, which is do the next right thing. And I found that that's a beautiful invitation to one for me, because for years I could only do what I felt up to, because I felt like I was dragging too much baggage, too much downward pull, too much lack of focus to whatever it was that was to be done, that I couldn't engage it until I felt better. And that would disrupt my ability to stay in the game, to participate consistently. And that's a painful thing in and of itself, because there's this feedback loop that happens by dropping out and then trying to step up. You have to push through the hangover of having dropped out of something or having procrastinated something for too long, and put it back together and step back into life. And that's painful. And the being consistent, the first being able to just have the discipline to say, show up, and to have friends. It's a big deal to have people who can help you show up without it being, how come you didn't show up? It's nice to have the firmness, but the kindness of keep going. And then it becomes mine. And then I can begin to do that on behalf of myself. And then the consistency becomes, then you're getting the rewards from the consistency. And then it's creating a different feedback loop that becomes more self-sustaining and really a whole kindness in and of itself that I could not have fathomed in my teens, 20s, 30s. Couldn't have fathomed it, even into my 40s.
Yeah. Well, beautifully said. And so it leads me to that other interesting, quirky, psychological pattern we call fantasizing. The head center imagination machine. So I just wonder if you can say anything about that, what your experience has been of that.
It just makes me laugh. When I was really little, we used to watch Zoom on TV, on public television, 2, 1, 3, 4. And I absolutely was taken with the little vignettes that they would do. They would go to some kid's farm and they would film the kid on the farm, and he would tell you how we milk the cow and how we do this, that, and other thing. And it would be like a little movie about that kid. And I went around for years as a little kid in my me movie. I would watch myself. We have my grandparents had a ranch, and there was a cold storage in the back. And I vividly remember going through the door to the cold storage several times so that I could really enjoy that moment in the movie, where I would watch myself. I'm the little girl, and here I approach the door, and there's a leather thong over that, and the nail goes in, and I pull the nail out, and this big, huge, thick door would open up, and inside would be the box of peaches, and I would go, and I would get the peaches, and it was this beautiful movie, and I could play it over and over and over again, and I was in it, and it was wasn't this magical with the peaches and so years with anything, here's me driving my car, or here's me, and I would be sort of watching myself and writing the scene, and it would have these beautiful qualities, or it would be really sad, really, really sad. And you could, anyway, it went on and on and on. Then it turned into more of giving the speech about the moment that's coming up, that this is really what this would be the way to say this. And I could articulate this. No, wait. No, this, okay. So the scene's like this, and this is when I get to say, and I get to say this. And I said it really, 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 really well. And then they said, wait. So here's the scene. That I could do for hours. And so look at the clock and go, what happened?
Yeah. So you go right into your own movie and watch and replay and redo and entertain and have drama.
Yeah.
Highs and lows, success. And So it's interesting. There's sort of different ways, obviously that material can be used to write stories with or write songs with, or which sounds like it probably did, right? um, or it can be, you can get lost and miss your life, right? Because you're busy fantasizing these things rather than living a life. And and so there's a lot of different ways it goes. I remember Don Riso was once said he had a story about when he wanted to be a classical pianist, and he had a piano, and he dreamed about being, a classical pianist for many years. And then somebody asked him, "Do you play the piano?" Or he said, "No, not yet." Right? And going, well, you might want to start playing if you're going to be this dream you have, right? So, or I've heard it talked about how a person, falls in love with somebody and then starts writing poems about them over and over again. Then I might say, well, have you talked to this person? No, not yet. But I have these poems. Can I share them with you? So, it's just interesting how that imagination fantasizing can work. And
I have to periodically remind myself that these beautiful friendships I have need to know that I have these beautiful friendships. And just remind myself, you need to let them know that you're thinking about them. And I'm much better at that than I used to be, but I still have to tap myself on the shoulder periodically and say, this person you're loving right now, why don't you tell them?
Yeah, because you're already having that experience, and it's very, very interesting. I think the other way I've noticed it in the past is if I had a moment where I'd been hurt, like when I was a little guy, I could then, this is where therapy has to be really careful, but I could reflect on the scene and I would start adding pieces to the events to make it more troubling and hurtful, and not even noticing that I was making it. It was bad enough as it was. It didn't need 5 more chapters connected to it, but there would be this reverie of rage or hurt, and it took a while to notice, oh, I inflate things that don't need to be inflated, or if somebody says something to me that hurts me, and then noticing I start to replay it and then add meaning to it. Like, they really meant that son of a bitch, I know it. And then it becomes even bigger. So have you had an experience like that before?
Oh yeah. All of it. I was trying to think, there's times so in my marriage, there are times when my husband can say something pretty innocent. And I can genuinely hear something very different. And I'll, in my mind, I'll take the hit and let it go. And then the hit returns and it wasn't even a hit. I mean, sometimes, there's a bar, but I married this beautiful 9, so he doesn't give hits. that I can take them is kind of funny, but I'll take it, and then it'll come back, and I'll take it again, and then the story will build about, it's coming from this kind of place, really, and it actually means this, and it's because of this, and it's actually a judgment about, and if you really take it apart, and I can get into this thing, and then, over the years, some years ago, I finally learned to, when I would try to reality check my emotional realness, and I would say, well, this is what happened. And my beautiful husband would say, I gotta tell you, I didn't say that. I don't even hold those kinds of thoughts. And it took me some years in our marriage to finally realize that, to take him at his word, because there's trust, there's the trust piece in here that a real terror about trusting.
Yeah.
Trusting. Do you mean what you say? Are you really meaning what you say? Did you really hear what I was saying? Are you just nodding? You're just giving me a bone. That piece can get really crazy. And so, it's a mercy to be able to know that my beloved husband doesn't say those things, but the creation that I could make out of it much less if something like that actually was said, or, some hurtful thing was intended, or then I can really go. And there's something goofy about the satisfaction of the build. There's no satisfaction in the feeling. And yet building the case and building it and putting it together and having the righteousness of, can you see what I look at? And it comes with a hangover as well.
Well, I've had that experience many times with my, unconditionally kind type 2 wife, who doesn't think these thoughts that I think as a type 4, right? And it just doesn't have the razor sharp, nice of thinking that I seem to have been born with. So yeah, so just following that, if you think about and talk about the type 4 and the security point being going to 1, where we might become like an unhealthy 1, trying to transform our partner because we see their flaws and how incredibly lazy they are about attending to healing themselves. Have you ever found yourself as sort of down that particular highway? It's one of the highways of hell we have.
Yeah. And I got through this. I am currently doing what they're calling a year-long certification through the Shift Network, which has given us a year to really spend some time digesting. And one of the pieces I loved having emphasized for a longer period of time was the digesting the shadow work in the direction of integration. And somehow I had skipped over big chunks of what it means for me in that 4 space to really recognize that in all of my sensitivity and, can you see what I see? It's so beautiful. The wave is a humanity that I can be mean and critical and exacting and intolerant and dismissive and really condescending, and that I can do those things to the people I care most about. And so, having to digest those pieces, it's always a gulp to look back over the years of my life and see places that I was harsh and hurtful, that I hurt people's feelings and maybe undermined their whole trajectory for a period of time by pulling their knees out from under them in my defensive judgmentality, criticalness. That's hard. But I feel like, that when I can digest that piece, when I can, and then be kind, the kindness, self-compassion, the self-love piece, which I always still sometimes, but the words love, self-love was a non-starter for me for a long time, because it just felt like the one that lives here doesn't deserve lled, and that's just a Hallmark card, and go away with your fluffy talk. And it had that quality, and I had to use the word tenderness. Be tender to yourself as you turn toward things to digest them. And after some, good amount of time with tenderness, then it starts to, I can say self-love and not have it be the words self-love, but a real deep love. But that took a long time for me to come into that space. But having love, self-love, and compassion for the ways that I can be ugly at that security point, and then to be able to catch it, because I can't catch it if I'm hiding from it. I can only catch it in the moment if I'm no longer so afraid of it. Carolyn Mace is a wonderful teacher I love. And one of the things she said early in my life was, put yourself in the shoes, put yourself in the position of the thing you fear most, and find out that you can handle it. Imagine the absolute worst happening and then check it. You'll deal. And she comes from a very eight space, and I love her because she just slams those things out there and they go off like little truth bombs. But there's something about that once I've gotten into that territory of you are totally capable of this, and it's not aligned with a truth. This isn't you being the giver and bringer of some sort of special truth. This is you being mean because you're afraid or because you're hurt, but still. And if I can stand there and bring love into that, then I can catch it when it's happening better.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a big work for everyone, and yeah, yeah. The problem with that particular delusion, as ones would attest to, is I feel so right and correct that I don't even. It's like whatever I do to implant this truth in your being is okay because it's in service of saving your soul. Now, how come that doesn't cheer you up? I don't get it. I've got to try harder. You didn't get it the first time. So, yeah, and then learning, oh, I do that when I'm feeling horrible about myself. And it turns into a target, the safety target, which is a family member, perhaps, when I'm eviscerating myself, my inner critic. I think type 4 can have a quite mean-spirited inner critic, and that can be very complex and creative. So it's not just a simple thing, of course, because type 4s are, special in all ways, right? So just that one sort of last thought before we stop, because we've done a lot of beautiful sharing. This, and you can throw this question out because it's one I hate, and I don't know why I feel inspired to say it, but if you were going to bring hope to type 4s, because we meet a lot of type 4s who are struggling and they're in that dark place, and it feels like I can't shake this cloud of melancholy, sadness. I'm a horrible being. I got the wrong family. I'm not even the right person. I got the wrong person here. Anything that comes to mind for you as a light of hope?
Yeah, I actually really appreciate the question because I often think of that myself in terms of what can I bring? What can I bring to the space that might be healing, and in particular for a path that I'm familiar with a lot of features of. I grew up with my parents and in my town and all of those things which are going to make those differences. But I guess if I was going to reach back, sometimes it comes up different ways. But one thing is, you do have a beautiful and precious and magical heart. Yes, you do. It is interesting. Every heart in every domain is, but there's something unique about every one of them. And you hold this space for this particular domain that is interesting in these particular ways. And it matters. That matters. And you can find the ways that you bring that forth. And you can trust the years. Things can take time. It's okay to love yourself. If it's hard to love yourself, it's okay to lean into something that's, take the tiny bites, be polite to yourself, and then maybe be kind to yourself, and then maybe bring some tenderness into yourself, and then maybe love yourself. That for me, there's nothing in this world bigger than my ego except something bigger than me. And that helps me when I realize that I'll never find that capacity to bring that love to myself from my ego patterns, that my access to something, whether in this beautiful creative soul, it's the ocean, the sky, the universe, the cosmos, source, magic, God, living cells, the microbiome, whatever it is, that something out there bigger than me is a really beautiful healing partner, companion, lover, friend. That, I think, if someone had handed me all of those things, and having a friend, finding someone, even, finding someone that you can have those conversations with. And when you can't, I will say this, sometimes talking to your phone, turning on your iPhone and making a small video and saying, I just want you to know I see you. Just saying.
That's awesome. Beautiful. Okay, well, thank you for that. Any last words for the cosmos before we close?
One is, I am so grateful for you, Michael Naylor. Thank you for doing all of these panels, for putting these beautiful beings into the space where we can share and listen to one another and learn from one another, and all of the teachings that come out of this sort of individual interview panel that you are creating. Thank you. And thank you for your journey and for walking it and practicing and being alive in it. And I appreciate that. And thank you to all of the Enneagram world, all of the healing modalities that are out there that can be brought into our world. And just that the planet and the world needs a lot of help. And may we find what we can bring.
Beautiful. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Much love to you. I'm going to turn the recording off here. See what happens.